All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Big Matt Podcast channel. Thank you for coming by and hanging out with me for just a few minutes. Just want to go over this. I always find interesting stuff on Joe Rogan. He just has good guests on, and it's this one is, as you can see the thumbnail, kind of how it's about this lady. She is a professor at North Carolina. She's the professor of religion, and they get into this conversation about UFOs and are they real, and you know kind of how that stuff works and what's people's opinions on that. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up. It helps me out a lot. Try to grow the channel. I very much do appreciate it. Um, let's just get over here into it, and I'll stop talking and we'll watch. And I've seen a little bit of this, but I hadn't really watched it through. So this is really just a reaction, and it's about 12 minutes long or so. And I may cut it off early and we'll talk about some of this. And it's kind of, all the stuff I do on my channel, by the way, if you hadn't ever been by here, it's kind of biblically based somewhat, kind of sound in that kind of genre and that kind of area. It's that kind of stuff. Not completely. We do some Bible study sometimes, may go through chapters and read things, something that's, in my head or something I'm thinking about, but mostly it's just reactions to other people and situations and things that they've dealt with and how I can relate to those and how maybe I can help you relate some of their situations to your situation and the things that you're going through. So let's jump right in over here and hit the old play button.
Yeah. So I think
Let me back it up because he asked her a question.
The Joe Rogan experience.
What do you think the UFO phenomenon is?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, that there are a lot of different varieties of it. But when we look at, like we were looking at the Francis of Assisi and the kind of historical things and the abductions and things like that, I think that it's been around for a long time, and that these are things that are in communication with us. So what I do in my book, both the books that I wrote about this, is I talk to people who I think represent thousands of people. So each person in the book represents thousands, if not more, maybe many thousands of people who have had experiences and the ways in which they interpret them. So all of the people seem to have had experiences where now what they want to do is they actually want to work for justice in different ways. Like Jose, the veteran in my book, he's working with young people and helping them deal with being addicted to social media and things like that, and helping them get through life, which is really hard right now. And that's what he's doing. And then you look at Dr. Whiteley, right? So she's working in this space where she's trying to, help people deal with the fact that they're seeing things that, that could down planes and things like that. And she's helping people talk about that. She's helping people. Each person is somehow doing what I'm suggesting, that I think this is a transformational thing without the drugs is what's going on. Like some kind of massive experience that people are having, and now it's getting out and people are being able to talk to each other through Reddit communities and, different types of social media. So it is, we digital technology, but this is what we're seeing now.
What do you think the physical objects are?
Well, okay, so this is something that's very interesting. We just looked at the Shroud of Turin. I believe that there are these, I would call them, and this is just my own non-scientific term, interdimensional objects. They're objects that have characteristics of our dimension and some other dimension.
So some other dimension has the...
Okay. Let's talk about that for a second. We unpacked a lot right there. Now he asked her about these other beings and shapes and things that we see. Sorry, things and shapes that we see that these people have seen, moving around the sky. And he's kind of asking, her, what her opinion is, on that. And she's kind of saying that it's based off of our reality, and that things that are here are also in other that are in other universes, which would mean that I guess she's, in the idea that there's multiple universes, and there's a lot of scientists and people out there that believe that. So let's see what he says here. We'll back it up for a second.
So some other dimension has the capability, or something from some other dimension has the capability of transporting a physical object into our realm.
Or even imprinting onto a physical object. Yeah.
How so?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think
What do
that's
you mean
what.
by, what does that mean? Imprinting onto
So
a
with the
physical
Shroud of
object?
Turin, we
Okay.
see the imprint of, the image, and
If it's real.
yeah, if it's real.
Now, if you don't know, they're talking about the Shroud of Turin, and basically, just quickly, it's the shroud that they used. They suspect it's the shroud that was used to cover Christ, as he came down off the cross and was put into the tomb before he rose from the dead. So that's what they're talking about. That's the shroud that they're speaking of, which is very interesting. If you hadn't seen anything about that, that is very interesting. I think 60 Minutes did a spot on it. Yeah, it's been some time ago. Now that's not news. So that's what they're talking about. But if you're interested more in that specifically, the shroud itself, there's a lot of stuff, but I'm pretty sure 60 Minutes did a good look into it. And there's been some more people done some other new things and studies and testings into it as here over the past year or two.
But it's an anomalous object. So we do have, from Gary Nolan, engineered objects that we don't know how they're engineered, but they definitely look like they're, it's off planet. I would call the kinds of things that we see in the historical record interdimensional types of things. Now, how? I don't know, Joe. Okay, so I just don't know. But I do think that scientists in the government know that these things exist, and they would like to figure it out. And so part of disclosure, the disclosure movement, is outsourcing this and trying to get as many people as possible to help in figuring it out.
What do you think when they use the term donations? What do you think the purpose of that is? If there is an object that is purposely released into our, like I'm sure you're aware of cargo cults, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So with cargo cults, for people that don't know, there's been some islands during World War I and World War II where planes landed there and they left. And these people, they created these statues of these planes and they worshiped them. And they wanted them to come back. Yes.
Yeah, because they got food and all kinds of wonderful things from the planes.
Right. And
yeah. But they thought of them as deities.
Right.
Wow, that's interesting. Let me back that up just a minute. I don't think I've heard of that. I may learn something here myself.
They left, and these people, cargo cults,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
That is purposely released into our, like I'm sure you're aware of cargo cults,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
So with cargo cults, for people that don't know, there's been some islands during World War I and World War II where planes landed there and they left, and these people, they created these statues of these planes and they worshiped them. And they wanted them to come back. Yes.
Yeah, because they got food and all kinds of wonderful things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. And
but they thought of them as deities.
Right.
Yeah.
The same way we would think of something from
like
somewhere
this.
else.
Yeah.
Because this thing that they're seeing is bringing them supplies and bringing them food up. Yeah, I could see where people would think that, like, these things that we see here on our island that are probably, whatever, and these things go by, and when they go by, I mean, if you're talking about being raised on an island where you've never seen nothing else but that, just put yourself in that position. I know you may be laughing, and that's fine to think, oh God, how silly these people are. That, if that's all you've ever known, I mean, if all you know is just when this shiny metal, or you don't even know what it is, just something that's shiny that maybe reflects like something that you've seen there on the island, I don't know, and it gives you things that you eat and makes you, feel better. So, you're not just eating coconuts and bananas, I guess, or that's interesting. I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that in my field has been called the cargo cult, the UFO cargo cult, right? And obviously Tyler and James view these parts as donate. They call it the donation site, right? So giving it the idea
is that just one theory?
Yeah. That's just one theory.
Are there other theories that there's a biological organism that encounters a lightning storm and it actually crashes and there's physical bodies?
Oh yeah,
that are
there
recovered?
is that. Yeah, there's that
Yeah.
going
What's your
around.
take on that? Because that's one of the things that Grush talked about and some of the other people talked about, that there are biological things that have been recovered.
Well, what impressed me about what he said was that he used the term biologics.
Now, like I said, I hadn't seen this. I kind of have had it. I had it on a little earlier, but I was writing some stuff for something else. So I was kind of hearing it, but so I'm learning as we go along. I'm watching it with you. Okay. So let's just keep watching. This is, it's interesting stuff. If you like this kind of stuff, hope you do. I do. And I'll give you my opinion when we go through this.
And I actually know that term because that's the same term that Tyler was talking about when he was creating materials in anti-gravity spaces on space shuttles and such. So I was wondering, because David Grush does get his information from people allegedly in the programs, but he's never seen these materials that I know of.
I think he has some firsthand experience that he was not able to talk about.
Okay.
That he's alluding to.
Okay.
I think, but this is recent, and he's been very careful about how he releases this information and what he's able to release and not able to release. And that I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Really?
So I mean, I've not seen any bodies, nor have I seen intact craft, but I also have had, now remember, I don't have a clearance like he has, so I can actually talk about what people have told me. I have had people tell me that, yes, Diana, there are intact craft. I don't know. I mean, maybe. So I don't know, Joe.
Have you studied Bob Lazar?
Okay, yes, I'm always asked about Bob Lazar.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but I can tell you that people that I've met who are associated with the programs tell me that he's right. Now I know his background and I know, all the things. I don't have an opinion one way or the other, but I can also say that a lot of times people with very disturbing backgrounds, who could be easily discredited, are given information and shown things and told things.
Well, I would think that that's sort of like a little escape clause.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is.
I mean, the guy's obviously a genius and was obviously a propulsion expert and put a fucking jet engine on a Honda in like the 1980s. He's a fascinating guy.
Yeah.
If you hadn't heard Bob Lazar, please do yourself a favor.
There's some element that exists in other places in the universe, which leads me to believe, not even to believe, but so here's the question.
If you hadn't seen or know anything about Bob Lazar, you stumbled across this channel and you're watching this video with me as I watch it. If you care anything about science or that type of stuff or elements and chemicals and those type of things, you've got to go find Rogan's interview with Bob Lazar. And if you're not a Rogan fan, that's fine. Not everybody is. But if it's not true, okay, if what he's saying is not true, he's one of the top storytellers, because if he can just make that up and that's that's the stuff that lives in his head and he just makes that stuff up as he goes, it's very interesting. So Bob Lazar, you can just type it in. I'm sure the Rogan podcast will come up. And it's long. Now, you probably won't sit down and watch it in its entirety, but if you like that kind of stuff, it's worth a look.
Are some of these things from other planets? Is that also in the equation? I mean, just because something is traveling interdimensionally, we do know that there are an infinite number of planets in the universe. I mean, we have no idea how many of them are capable of supporting human-like life or some other kind of life, or an infinite number of varieties of life.
Yeah, that's very true. We don't know. There's a lot of things that we don't know. We know what we believe, and if you're a Bible reader like I am, then we believe what the book says. And we're given enough information to know how we are to live our life. And, we're saved by grace and faith. And that's how Christians choose to believe, followers of Christ. So, but to say that there's other, I don't know. I don't think nobody really does. Well, we will find out one day for sure.
And if that life can do what we've done and get to some part of its progression where it's capable of creating what we're calling artificial intelligence or super advanced technology, why wouldn't it come here?
Yes, I'm not discounting ET.
So that could be there too.
I think so, especially because of the ways in which the materials are being manufactured off planet, like the ones that we just saw. And that was in formation when I met Tyler 2014, and now it's a full-on thing that's happening, right? So it's a supercharged program of creating things that will help us off planet. I mean, certainly then, yeah, I think so. I mean, but I don't know.
Right.
So I have to just be honest.
So it might be a bunch of different things happening all at the same time, interdimensionally, extraterrestrially, something from a distant galaxy that's figured out some new method of propulsion that's beyond our imagination that can visit, and then also things that are coming here from other dimensions.
Yes. And even recently, somebody had, well, I can't say anything. I can't say, I'm sorry. I don't want to be that person that goes on your show and says,
okay.
I can't say that.
But
I probably, most likely there are, if there's crash retrievals here on Earth, perhaps there are in space as well.
Do you, when they talk about inventions that emerged post Roswell, that's one of the points of speculation, is that we have back engineered something, and that this led to the creation of fiber optics and a lot of other technologies that seem to emerge after that time.
Yeah. So this question was prominent in my mind in 2012 when I met Jacques Vallée. So I was already aware of his work, even as a person who hadn't studied UFOs or even believed in them. Jacques Vallée is just one of these people, right, that you come across his work and he's fascinating. So I thought it was strange that not only was he a person who was, pre-engineered ARPANET, right? He was on ARPANET, which is pre-internet. He was creating that at the same time as being obsessed with UFOs and doing, being a ufologist. These things seemed that they had to be together, right? There's something that, what's going on here? So, and I'm in touch with him often, and he says a lot of things that are rather cryptic, but sometimes I ask him specifically, was what you were doing on ARPANET related to back engineered UFO parts? And then he'd say something like, there are many secrets in Silicon Valley, something like that.
Yeah. He's real cryptic. He's kind of difficult to have a conversation with publicly.
Well, it does have a lot. I guess there are lots of secrets in Silicon Valley,
of course,
which is where he lives.
Yeah. Another thing that was really fascinating about your book was you were talking about how much religion he studied.
Yes. That was really interesting. So in the book, what I do is I uncover not just him, but Alan Hynek. They were friends, and they were both Rosicrucians, which is a form of, he might not like me to say this, but it's a form of mystical Christianity in a sense. But a lot of Rosicrucians don't view their roots as Christian. They look at it as Egyptian. But it's an esoteric tradition, and it involved.
That's a interesting topic. Rosicrucians, I studied on some of that back 20 years ago or so when I was reading into other religions and that type of stuff. And it come back up in studies when I was touching on some different things of studying the Quran and those things. It's really different. It's something you probably need to, if you're curious about it, something to look at for yourself. Now, don't let these curious bugs bite you to where, it's going to, if it's something that you feel like you can't do and you're going to stumble and it's going to bring you away from your faith, then don't do it. If you don't think you can, but it's interesting how to see other people's ideas about how they see things and that type of stuff. It's interesting.
Meditation, I think it most likely involves this thing that you and I have been discussing in the whole talk so far is the pineal gland thing, the access point, because both of them believe in this kind of life, this meditating and things like that. And so I included references. Everything I say in my books, by the way, I pass to the person that I'm writing the chapter about. So everything that I said about Jacques, I gave it to him beforehand. And I said, are you okay with me talk about going to his apartment and seeing his library, which is an amazing library, a special place for Rosicrucians, like a special place of presence of the sacred. So, and he actually did those himself. So he learned how to do stained glass from people at Chartres, by the way.
There could be, some things with Rosicrucian. other people's opinions that's looked into that particular religion, and then we'll move through this, and we'll finish this up. We need to get off here. I try not to be too long on these. It could be studying or the worshiping of one's self, to worship more in yourself, and you have to be careful with those things. And you know, a lot of people's ideas and everybody's religious ideology, if you're a Christian, then you are. But everybody's relationship with Christ is different, and it's supposed to be. And how you get there is always different because it's personal. It's a personal relationship. And sometimes the idea of meditation and prayer, which, you know, are they the same thing? You know, if you're in deep thought and you feel like you need to go into a certain part of the house, that's spoken, you know, about in the Bible. But it's interesting, and it's something to look into, that Rosicrucian. But don't just be wild about it and be crazy. But let's finish this, and I'll give you my opinion about what I think about these UFO phenomenons.
And yeah, just amazing. And he had a lot of books on angels and fallen angels in that library, like almost like it was almost like going into the Vatican archive, going into this place, because these looked like first editions or close. So, you know, really, really old books about this topic.
Fallen angel.
Yeah. I was pretty shocked when I went. We were going to have lunch and talk about the crash site and maybe talk about, you know, what I learned from Tyler and that kind of thing. And we went to lunch, and then he said, "Do you want to see the library?" And I was like, "Yes, of course." So I saw the handwritten documents from Project Blue Book. And that was just going into the library. That wasn't actually in the library. Then when we got in there, I noticed a big bookcases of these books, and of course I was drawn to them. And he said he picked out one and he opened it, and it was about angels. And he said, "This is a book about angels." And I could see that. And I was looking at it. I was like, wow. And then I looked at the other bookshelf, and that bookshelf was just as impressive. And then it was about fallen angels. He said, "Oh, this one's about fallen angels." And then he made a joke, and he said, "You can't have one without the other." And I thought that was really interesting.
That does seem to align with what we're talking about, with like the struggle of good and evil.
It does. That's what he said too. And I was actually shocked at that point. I was like, wow. So just, you know, I'm a professor of religion, you know, so I'm like, yeah, I'm right about, you know, my intuition was somehow confirmed.
And by the way, I think this should be, I'm not sure if this is totally true, but I believe he was the inspiration for the French character in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, those things there, as you start to, you know, unwind some of that, and we'll work from the back there. Good and evil, and how these alien phenomenon and that kind of stuff plays into that. I'm assuming that the aliens are angelic, but not the friendly kind. I think, there's no proof of this. There's definitely nothing in the Bible. It's just my old noggin, the thing that up here on top of your shoulders. By knowing the Bible and reading through it, you can tell to where what angels are, how they acted in the Bible, and things that they done, and how angels communicated with people. Now those things are true, because we can see that. We can, and I'm a science guy, and I'm a history major by trade. So, and I like to be able to read things and see how it works out, to, you know, have a presumption, and you can have enough common sense to see that. So yes, there has to be good, so there can be evil. And without getting too far into it, because I could do a whole nother video on that, good and evil, one has to be there for the other. Because of that one, there can't be the other. Because if it's just all good, then what is the point of afterlife, the spiritual life? to go up to the spirit in the sky, like the song says, if everything was already good. And if everything was bad, then it just wouldn't be, it wouldn't really be nothing. It would just all be bad. But if it was all bad and you never knew good, then how would you know that it could be better if you've never had better? So those are all very deep philosophical ideas of good and evil and religion. And we're not here to do that. Now, the idea with the angels and fallen angels and those kind of things, Genesis chapter 6, you can start right at the front of the chapter, and it works into, that chapter is working towards by verses 6 or so, and then chapter 2, but in the middle toward the end of the one, it's talking about Noah and the ark and that kind of thing. But when you back up to the first part of it, God is talking about to the people and how corrupt they are and how people have went astray and those type of things. And fallen angels to be mixed and mingled with humans here on earth. So the women took upon these fallen angels, and he punished these women for doing that. And these giant people, whole huge race of people, to come for this. Now, this idea that aliens are demons, because I can see, and you can read, religion or not, if you're wherever your faith is, not here to do that right now. But you can read the Bible and talk and see what it says about angels. And these angels are cast away, with their wings taken away, to be fallen. I'm just assuming that because if you clip a bird's wings or something that has wings, if you take them away, then they're fallen. They're going to fall. Okay. So I would assume that their wings were taken. And they've been around since the beginning of time, pretty much. I mean, you can go through Genesis and read the first, chapters 3, 4, right in there and read along and see, when man's created, and from the first chapter of the Bible, and they were there. Okay. They were there before, and that would tell me that if they are fallen, and this is how they move around, because they've lost, quote, their spiritual powers because they're fallen angels. So they're kind of godlike. They're not gods, but they have these spiritual abilities that the other angels would have. But they're fallen, so they don't have all their powers. Okay. Now, again, this is, don't pick your Bible up, or don't run in there and don't run there and ask Uncle Larry if are these old bad, crazy angels? Big Matt said on the podcast, them aliens, that the UFO space machines is full of crazy, deranged angels. No, that's not exactly right, but it's not in the Bible. No. These are just things that I've taken from the Bible, my readings over the past more than 30 years of reading it. And from my history, my background of where I come from, and how religion was such a huge part of my childhood because of the difference of my parents, I had to choose. So I was pushed to choose at a young age. That's where my knowledge comes from, of reading it and studying it. So my opinion then, to close this out, 32 minutes, we're rocking good here. Thank you guys again for coming by. Subscribe if you hadn't already, and it's just real easy. Mash the thumbs up button. I mean, if you've been hanging around this long, hit the thumbs up, okay? So that's just my opinion on it, and I appreciate her opinion. She's a professor at North Carolina, but she's smart, probably memorizes things very well. And Joe Rogan is a celebrity superstar, and his opinions are just as good as mine, as good as hers also. And their opinions are the same as yours. So thanks for coming by and hanging out, and I do appreciate it. So to kind of sum it up, yes, I think there's some type of something there's something else out there. And what it is, completely. I'm not sure because I don't know everything. But I don't think they're friendly. And I think you should be careful. And remember, God is coming back. And the time is drawing near. The time has come. And we don't know when the old death's door is going to come and knock on it for us. We don't know when. So if you're not sure about where you are in your life with your salvation, and you don't know where you're going to go tonight when you go to sleep and you don't wake up, then I would suggest that you just admit that you're a sinner and you believe that Christ died on the third day and he rose from the dead, and you confess your mouth. It's just that easy. Lord said, if you know him and you confess with your mouth that you're a sinner, that he will know you and he will be with you forever. Now, that don't mean it's going to be easier. He's not a genie in a bottle. It's not let me pray for a nice car or let me pray for a beautiful house or a wife or the perfect things. That's not how this works. So if that's what you're looking for, you're looking at the wrong God, because those other things are material things, and that's not what God is here for. He loved you enough to send you his son that he bore to send to this earth as God, as himself here, to give you opportunity, because all the works and all the great things that you do for people will not get you straight to heaven. Yeah, you should want to do those things because you're saved and being a good person, but there's going to be a lot of good people in hell. So if you're not sure, pray those things. You admit you're a sinner, you believe Christ died on the cross for your sins, and you confess your sins with your mouth. Welcome to the family. If there's anything that I can do for you, be just mindful to know, very easy to get a hold of, and I'll be glad to talk to anybody. And I can tell you about the journey I've been through, and I've been through a lot, and it's not been great. I don't wear a suit and tie and profess to have a degree in religion or theology of religion as this lady, but I promise you I've got the badge of life, and God loves me and he loves you too. So thank you for coming by. Joe Rogan reaction here to the podcast. It's very interesting, and I just think we need to be careful of the UFO thing and know that there is good and evil, and those little things floating around the sky, I don't think they're good. I think it's times to show that the end is near. So keep your heads clear and your hearts full of God. And if you need me, just find me. Know me, see me out in town, holler at me sometime. Okay. All right. Love y'all. Thank you. Have a great evening.